Hey y'all, I want to talk a little bit about the use of atomic weapons against Japan to end World War II in 1945. So, as you know, the Manhattan Project had been going on for a couple of years in the US, and we were developing the world's first atomic weapons. This was kept a secret from the entire US population, even the vice president, Harry Truman at the time. He didn't know about it. Only a handful of people knew about it. Many of the people who were working on the project didn't know what they were working on. So, our ally, the Soviet Union, was not aware of this huge project. The only other country that was a part of it was England. So the Soviet Union was one of our main allies, but towards the end of the war, there was a lot of tension building between the US and the Soviet Union, and that was becoming more and more apparent. So President Roosevelt kept this a secret from the Soviet Union. However, there was a spy, somebody who was working on the Manhattan Project, a German scientist named Klaus Fuchs. He was spying for the Soviet Union and he was keeping them informed about the project the whole time. Not only that this was happening, but he was giving them information on how the atomic bombs were being developed, very detailed information that would allow them to create their own bombs. So the fact that the US didn't inform our allies about this massive project made the Soviet Union even more suspicious of us because they knew it was happening, but they also knew that we were hiding it from them. So there was a lot of suspicion on both sides. The war against Germany ended on May 7th, 1945. Prior to this point, the Soviet Union was not involved in the war against Japan. These were kind of seen as two separate fronts. The Soviet Union had made an agreement with the United States and England that they would join us in the war against Japan 3 months after Germany's surrender. So up until that point, they hadn't been involved in fighting in Asia. So 3 months after Germany's surrender would have been August 7th, 1945. Is it any coincidence that the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima on August 6th, 1945? No, there's no coincidence. Towards the end of this war, there was a lot of knowledge that there was going to be a pretty big competition between the US and Soviet Union after World War II ended, that we weren't going to be allies anymore. We were going to be enemies. That was becoming kind of apparent. So US leaders, FDR, and just a handful of others, not even Truman, wanted to defeat Japan without the help of the Soviet Union. Pretty much all military analysts were speculating that yes, it would be hard to defeat Japan, but once the Soviet Union joins us in that fight, which would happen on August 7th, once they join us, it'll be a pretty easy defeat. So that was sort of the analysis from the experts that, yeah, all we need to do is wait for them to join and then we'll be able to defeat Japan easily. After the atomic bomb was tested successfully and President Roosevelt got word of that, he became anxious to use it before August 7th, 1945, in order to defeat Japan by ourselves without the help of the Soviet Union. And the reason for this is because he knew that if the Soviet Union was involved in helping to defeat Japan, they would want some sort of say-so in the occupation and rebuilding of Japan, kind of like what happened in Korea. After World War II, Korea was split between North and South. The North was kind of controlled by the Soviet Union. It was communist. The South was controlled by the United States. It was capitalist. So they had to sort of divide it in half because they couldn't agree on what sort of country it was going to be. And FDR did not want this to happen with Japan. He did not want the Soviet Union to take over more territory in Asia, which they would have done if they had been involved in helping to defeat Japan. They would have felt sort of a right to take over that territory and to control it and make it part of their empire. So FDR did not want this to happen. He wanted Japan to only surrender to the United States. And so it became sort of this very important deadline that we have to drop the first bomb before the Soviet Union joins the war against Japan. And the other motivation, of course, ending the war as quickly as possible was, a very strong motivation. And I'm not trying to downplay that. But the other reason that a lot of experts say that there was this sort of desire to use the atomic bombs was to demonstrate to the Soviet Union that we have this weapon, we have this capability, because remember, we didn't think that they knew that, but they actually did know that, thanks to Klaus Fuchs. So there was a desire to say, like, we have the upper hand, look what we can do. So for those reasons, I find them to be kind of factors in the argument that we didn't need to use those weapons. We could have defeated Japan without the use of atomic weapons had we waited for the Soviet Union to join in and help us. Of course, on the other side, many people would say, and I kind of agree, that it was important to make sure that the Soviet Union didn't take more territory. Knowing what their people experienced after World War II, I'm kind of glad that they weren't able to for more territory in Asia, because there were, massive human rights abuses. But nobody knew that at the time. So a lot of this motivation to use the atomic bomb was about creating the post-war world, was to ensure American dominance in the post-war world. And whether or not you think that that justifies the use of the atomic bombs is your own decision. Just make sure that you can explain how this decision to use the bombs was not only a decision to end the war quickly, but also a big factor in that decision was American dominance after the war ended. All right, well, I'll see y'all next week.